Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dog Q&A 15. And I am going today, we're going to talk about trigger stacking in dogs. So this is something that dogs experience when they're under stress, and it's kind of a way to understand how a dog perceives the world and how things affect them. And what trigger stacking is what I'm going to do here is show you a picture. So I'm going to share my screen and bring up this amazing picture I found online. And this will help describe what I'm talking about here. So shout out there to YaleTownDogTraining.com. I don't know where they are, but great job on this picture. So trigger stacking is something in dogs that happens when multiple stressors pile up on top of them. So what we have in this chart is this threshold of what a dog can handle. So on the left side, this left axis is the dog's threshold of their triggers that are causing them stress and stress and stress. And as you know, the more stress the dog gets, the more likely they are to bite. Now, I always say any dog with teeth can bite. And even those that don't have teeth can also bite, but it just may not hurt. So as things pile up, dogs get closer and closer to that bite threshold. So if you look at, say, this first block here, so we have large dogs. So maybe you have a dog who's afraid of large dogs. Right there, you're going to have a immediate jump up to 25% threshold. So your dog is, say you have a small dog, you're out walking, you see a large dog, his threshold goes up to 25%, which means he's 25% closer to getting pushed to the point of biting. Now let's add, let's say you're walking your dog and you've got a small dog and someone reaches down and pats him on the head. It's someone your dog doesn't know and your dog is not comfortable. Boom, he's immediately up to 40%. So now your dog has, for your dog, compared to a large dog encounter, that's a 25%, a pat on the head brings him up to 40. So he's that much closer to this bite threshold. Maybe a skateboard goes by, boom, your dog's at 60%. That means it shows you that skateboards are way more stressful than seeing another large dog, even by like 2.5 times. So maybe you're out on a walk and you've got a large dog going by, your dog gets stressed. We know that's 25%. At the same time, you pass a person who reaches down and pats your dog on the head. Now that person is bringing your dog up not to 40% because we're already at 25%. Now we've got to add 40% on top of it. Now your dog's at 65% close to the bite threshold. Now, maybe at the same time, a skateboard whizzes by in the background. You may not be aware of it, but it may just be the sound that's triggering your dog. Now you've got 3 things happening at once, and look what's happening. So the large dog is just a 25%. This, a stranger patting your dog on the head is 40%, and the skateboard is 60%. The problem with that is if you have to add every stressor together to see where your dog is in relation to that bite threshold. So now we've just pushed the dog up to 125%. The bite threshold is 100%. So that tells us we've just pushed our dog past the bite threshold. And it may not be that we pushed our dog got pushed there by all the things going on in the environment. So you have to be aware of, in order to figure out this chart for your dog, you've got to be aware of what stresses out your dog. So you need to know what those things are that are going to push him up towards that bite threshold. So I'll give you an example. Last night, well, let's start back with February. So our dog Sammy, who's a 60-pound, 13-year-old Husky Jindo Shepherd Lab mix, he was brought into the shelter. We got him when he was about a year old. Came into the shelter with another large female dog that looked like, I would say, was his mom. So right there, I know he was with his mom for the first year of his life, which means he never gained that confidence of being away from his siblings or parents. So he had some insecurity from the get-go. Now we've got, then he came to our house where we had Maddie. So now he had another female dog that he could rely on and sort of help his insecurity. He's with her for 12 years. Fast forward to February of this year, we had to put Maddie to sleep. Now he's alone for the first time in his life. That is a major stressor for a dog at 13 years of age. I don't expect him to get a whole lot more secure from this point on. So that is always in the back of my head, is that Sammy's alone for the first and only time in his life. Then we bring in another dog, and that only happened maybe within the 2 weeks after Maddie was put to sleep. So now we've got a new little dog in the house, and he loves little dogs. He's very tolerant of little dogs, but he's under a great deal of stress just being the only dog for the first time without a larger other dog to kind of rely on. So I think he, based on this chart, just being alone for him is probably 40%. So that's like a pat on the head. So Sammy's 0 is probably actually at 40%. So we don't have 100% here to work with anymore. We're up to like 60% leeway that we can add to his life before he is pushed to that bite threshold. So last night we had some, and then factor in now that we packed up our entire house, got rid of everything we owned in California, and moved across the country. We moved to a place in a house he had stayed in before. However, he has never been there more than a couple weeks, and he had Maddie with him every time. So now he's alone. He watched his entire house go away, and the only house he knew for 12 years is now gone, and he moved into a new house with a small dog and a lot more activity. So Sammy in life, I'm going to say at 40% is where he sort of resides for being alone for the first time. Maybe add another 20% for the move across the country and being in a new place with a new dog. So he's around a 60% just in general in his life. Now we go on walks, he sees another dog. That doesn't seem to be very stressful for him. That may be like a 1 or 2%. However, in the house is where he seems to have the most amount of issues. So understanding that he's at 60% to start with, people are coming over. It's getting more crowded in the house. And anyone who's been in a room that starts to get crowded, you can feel the stress rising in the room. That's why cities are more stressful than the suburbs typically, because there's more people packed into a smaller space. So just like we feel that stress in a city, dogs feel that too. So he's in his house, his new house, he's still adapting to it. All these people come in. And even if it's only a few people, he's getting stressed by that. So now he can very easily get pushed to the bite threshold. And I would say at this point, since he's starting at really a 60% or higher, it's not going to take much to push him over the edge where he might snap. He has snapped at a couple of people and things since we've been here. One was Minnie. She walked by his water bowl. He was already under a bunch of stress that day. He snapped at her. Fortunately, he doesn't do anything when he snaps at this point. It's just an air snap or a warning, or he might put his mouth on her, but he doesn't put any pressure. So he's not at that intense stress where he's going to really do some damage. At this point or in that moment, I don't know that the next moment will be different because he could be in a completely different place. There could be a new thing in the triggers that are, or the stressors that are triggering him to push him over the edge. So anytime you take your dog to an environment, oh, and by the way, the other time Sammy snapped was when he was in a crowded room, someone reached out to pet him. Look at this here, pat on the head, 40%, and he turned and snapped. He literally just wanted to get away. Now, that is on us as his owner to make sure he doesn't get put in that position where he needs to snap because he's so stressed out. So that was our fault for not predicting ahead of time that that was going to be too much for him. So looking at this chart, I can go, okay, so Sammy's at about a 60% just in general. We're going to have people over tonight. That's going to push him over the edge. Let's put him away and put him somewhere quiet, and then instruct people to ignore him and leave him alone. Maybe you're going out on a walk with your dog and you know a large dog is stressful for your dog, and someone patting them on the head is stressful. Maybe those two things happen congruently and you go, you know what, we need to just get our dog out of here now, go home, let them relax. For some dogs, that's not a stressful thing. And if it's not, great. So it's very important that you understand A, what's stressful to your dog, and B, what stress looks like in your dog and how your dog communicates when he or she is under stress. So I've got a calming signals article on my blog with pictures. That's great. You can go online and look up calming signal videos of dogs, and then you can see it in real time with the full action. But it's so important to understand our dog's communication because they are communicating all the time. Like for Sammy, when he starts to get stressed, he doesn't act out, he shuts down. So what he will start to do, sort of his chain of events, is to start avoiding people. Maybe he's still moving around in the room, but he kind of stays away from people. Then he'll move to laying down, and then he will put his head down. It's sort of like he's trying to make himself smaller and more invisible. But the more he does that, sometimes the more people feel sorry for him and want to interact with him. And then that's when we need to tell people you need to leave him alone, or we do the preemptive strike and put him away before they even come over. So keep that all in mind. Get to know your dog's communication, their stress signals, their triggers, things that they fear or dislike. And you might have someone pat your dog on the head and they do a lip lick, and then where they flick their tongue out a little bit. That's a mild stressor for your dog. If your dog moves away entirely from the hand coming at them, that's a very large stressor for your dog. So you have to look at which communication they're giving at what time to know how stressful these things are for them. So hopefully that helps with learning about trigger stacking in your dog and what's too much for them, and why when a trainer hears this phrase, we know it's ridiculous. My dog just bit out of nowhere. Okay, that might appear to be the case, but I promise you, your dog gave so many signals before that time. Most dogs do not want to bite because that can cause injury to them. They don't want things to escalate to that point. But if that's their last resort, that's what they're going to do. So a lot of times, I will say most of the time, every dog is giving you 20, 50 different signals of communication of how stressed they are and that they're stressed. So we need to pay attention to these subtle things, and you have to teach yourself to see them because, for those of us that work with dogs, we see it all the time, and it's, I just see it without even thinking. But you've got to make yourself aware of these things so you can read your dog. So hopefully that gives you some good information. If you've got a dog with a lot of stress and stressors, get to know what causes them so you can do a preemptive strike and get in and reduce the stress before it gets to the bite threshold. And then you never want to have your dog get above the bite threshold where they're just really completely gone. Like that's it. It's too much. So if you have questions about anything, just shoot me an email at casperscanines@gmail.com. Or if you want to be on the dog Q&A as a guest, let me know that as well. Okay, guys, hope that helped, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.